He sent a letter to every newspaper in the city. He told them the exact night he was coming. He told them the exact time, 15 minutes past midnight. He signed it from hell. And then he made them an offer. Any home playing live jazz music when he arrived would be spared. Any home that was silent, he was coming in. New Orleans had 1 week to decide. This is the story of the Axeman of New Orleans, a serial killer who terrorized one of America's most iconic cities for 18 months, murdered at least 6 people, including a 2-year-old girl, and was never caught, never identified, never even seen clearly by a single person who lived to describe him. And the most disturbing part of this case is not the murders, it's the letter. Stay with me. New Orleans in 1918 was a city already stretched to its limit. World War I was grinding through its final year. The Spanish flu was beginning its sweep across America. The city's Italian immigrant community, grocers, laborers, families who had crossed an ocean to build something, were packed into tight neighborhoods along the narrow streets of the French Quarter and beyond. On the night of May 23, 1918, Joseph Maggio and his wife Catherine were asleep above their grocery store on Magnolia Street. Someone removed a panel from their back door, quietly, cleanly, from the outside. They entered the bedroom. They used an axe found on the property. Joseph's throat was slit. Catherine was beaten. Both were killed. The axe was left behind. Nothing was stolen. That detail, the axe always left, nothing ever taken, would become the axeman's signature. He was not robbing these people. He was not looking for money. Whatever was driving him, it was something else entirely. 3 months later, on August 10, 1918, Joseph Romano, an 80-year-old grocer, was attacked in his bedroom while his nieces slept in the next room. They heard noise, rushed in, and caught a glimpse of a large, heavy-set man in a dark suit and slouchy hat, disappearing into the darkness. Romano died 2 days later. The same door panel entry, the same axe left behind. The police had nothing. No fingerprints, no witnesses who could give a real description, no motive they could pin down. The victims were almost all Italian immigrant grocers, which led investigators to suspect the mafia, some kind of extortion racket gone violent, but nothing connected. No money trail, no demands, no pattern that made sense. Then came the night that changed everything, March 10, 1919. The New Orleans suburb of Gretna. Charles and Rosie Cortimiglia, a young Italian grocer couple, were asleep in their home with their 2-year-old daughter Mary between them. Rosie woke to the sound of her husband struggling with a large man in their bedroom. She grabbed Mary and begged for their lives. The axeman brought the axe down on all 3 of them. Charles survived with a crushed skull. Rosie survived with 5 wounds to her head. Little Mary died in her mother's arms. When the neighbor arrived, Rosie was standing in the doorway with blood streaming down her face, still holding her daughter, whispering the child's name. That image, a mother covered in blood, clutching a dead 2-year-old, whispering Mary, ran in the Times-Picayune and broke the city open. 3 days later, a letter arrived at the newspaper. It was dated March 13, 1919. The return address was hell. The letter opened, "Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a fell demon from hottest hell." He told the city he would return on the night of March 19th at 15 minutes past midnight, and then he made his offer. "I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have mentioned." The city had 6 days. What happened next is one of the strangest nights in American history. Every dance hall in New Orleans filled to capacity. Bars that had never hosted live music scrambled to find bands. In homes across the city, families who had never thrown a party in their lives opened their doors and invited musicians inside. Amateur bands played in living rooms. People danced in the streets. The sound of jazz poured out of hundreds of houses simultaneously into the warm Louisiana night. At 15 minutes past midnight on March 19, 1919, New Orleans was the loudest city in America. No one was attacked that night. Now here is where this case becomes something more than just a murder mystery. Because the letter, authentic or not, exposed something real about the city it was written to. New Orleans in 1919 was a place where the rules of ordinary life did not always apply. where a killer could write a letter from hell and the city would respond not with panic but with a party, where jazz, a music that the authorities had been trying to suppress, that had been driven out of Storyville when the city shut down its red light district just 2 years earlier, became the one thing that could save your life. There was something the city understood about that offer that the rest of America probably wouldn't have. The attacks continued after March 19th. Mike Pepitone was killed in October 1919, struck over the head 18 times while his wife slept in the next room. She woke to his screams, rushed in, and said she saw 2 large figures disappearing through the window. It was the last confirmed Axeman killing. And then he stopped. No arrest. No trial. No confession. No body. The Axeman simply vanished from New Orleans the same way he had arrived, leaving nothing behind except the dead, the letter, and the silence. There is one suspect. His name was Joseph Mumfree, a career criminal with a history of violence against Italian grocers. A crime writer named Colin Wilson, working from an account by author Robert Tallant, connected Mumfree to the attacks. In December 1921, 2 years after the last killing, Mumfree was shot dead on a street in Los Angeles by a woman named Esther Pepitone, the widow of Mike Pepitone, the Axeman's last victim. She said she recognized him as the man she had seen leaving her husband's bedroom the night he was murdered. She was convicted of murder and served 3 years. She never explained how she found him. She never explained how she was certain. She was released and disappeared from the historical record entirely. Was Mumfree the Axeman? Nobody knows. The evidence connecting him to the crimes is entirely circumstantial. The police never formally charged him. The case was never officially closed. What we know is this: 12 people were attacked across 18 months. At least 6 died. The victims were almost all Italian immigrants. The killer entered through the same kind of door panel every time. He never brought his own weapon. He always used an axe he found on the property. No one ever saw his face clearly. Not one person who could identify him survived with a memory of what he looked like. And he wrote a letter from hell and made an entire city dance. The Rosie Cortimidle case has one more detail that deserves its own moment. After the attack, while still in the hospital, Rosie accused her neighbors, 17-year-old Frank Giordano and his elderly father, I. Orlando, of being responsible. The families owned rival grocery stores next door to each other. Frank and I. Orlando were convicted of murder. Frank was sentenced to hang. Then, 8 months later, Rosie recanted, publicly, in the pages of the Times-Picayune. She said she had lied. She said the Giordanos had nothing to do with her daughter's death. She said she didn't know why she had accused them. The Giordanos were released. Frank Giordano had come within weeks of being executed for a murder committed by a man who was never caught. 2 innocent people nearly died for the Axeman's crime. That detail does not make it into most tellings of this story. If this is the kind of dark history you came here for, the cases where the real story is darker and stranger than anything you were taught, subscribe right now. Every week we go somewhere the history books barely touched. Click the button. 2 seconds. The Axeman of New Orleans killed at least 6 people. He terrorized a city for 18 months. He made them dance to save their lives. He was never caught. And somewhere in Louisiana, in a city that answered a letter from hell with jazz music, he is still unidentified. That video on Anna Goldie, the last witch executed in Europe, is already up. Click it now.